Hello, old friends. Welcome again. I am Lemuaya of Tachyonic Service. Why so quickly, one would ask? Why did the transfer from the channel's consciousness into my awareness happen so rapidly this time? Very simple reason. Since I was last here with you, dear Lemurian Council, I never left. Where would I go? This is where the party is. This is where things are happening on a universal scale. And it has given me a chance to catch up with a very old friend of mine that you know by the name of Kutumi Lal Singh. As you know, this beloved creature of insanity and schizophrenia and very bad jokes and bad accents indeed, but also of great wisdom and awareness, has been here for a while now, has been stationed, if you will, in this area, in this free energy third wave portal that this area known as Den Helder is. Came in about last year, he did, and spent several months in this area, although he has been transmitted from place to place to place when his words were needed. Now, today, as I will take my leave of you, again, temporarily as always, I will offer him my back, so I can take him with me, beyond the edge of all things. That is my duty, my task, my honor, to actually give you the ability to enter and leave this reality. Never forget that you have free choice, and that it was your free choice to be here at this given moment on planet Earth. Oh, there are so many of you who would doubt. There are so many of you who would ask the question, is this really my place? This definitely must be my last life on Earth. And all I can do is give a very British ha ha ha. Because of course, it will not be. It will never be the last life here. This is your passion. This planet. Exploration. Investigation. It is your beating of your heart that brings you here every time, towards the beating of the cosmic heart of the cosmic mother. That would be the central sun. You are in love with all of this, as I am in love with you. And that it is my duty to deliver and once again take you away. I must say, however, if I am honest, all of you sitting here, right here in this room, and this is not true for everybody listening to these words at the latest stage, but all of you sitting here in this room have been riding my back only once so far, as you came in to that which you call creation, to that which you call all that is. Oh, you have shifted from lifetime to lifetime, yes, but never have you truly left. So, that has been my honor to take you into this place, but never did we take you out of it. Just so you know. You are not going anywhere because you would not want to go anywhere if you are not bothered by that little trinket called mind. Let's pick up where we left off, shall we? Last we talked we talked about the Lemurian Council, which is you, which is the totality of you. Interestingly enough, after my first part of this message, questions were asked to the channel. Cannot be possibly true, can it? That I, little human, am special. Oh yes, you are. And if I am going to have jokes this time, please forgive me. You might hear in my accent sometimes that Kutumi is also blended with this message. That is why I am so daft. He has already climbed on my back, I'm afraid. Anyway, yes, you are. Everybody on this planet Earth is. Why else would one choose to be here? So many have given the message in the past that you were the ones, all of humanity, were the ones that so many other souls stepped aside for, so you could undertake this mission. It is, however, a very human thing to do, to think when the message is given that one is special, that the other one then must be something else. So now you know. And let's carry on with the message. Last we spoke, I told you about the first councils that made up the large Lemurian Council. And I began in a place of beauty. Beauty, by the way, that since then, you might want to know, has begun to re-emerge in the cells, in the hearts of plants and animals. I challenge you to look out into the world and to see these new and special gifts. This simply free energy, you know, this simply beauty, you know, that is pouring forth from all things. But it is indeed magnificent. That is happening right now. That is why you are finding within yourself the ability to communicate with things around you more often. And it might also be the reason why you are resisting some of the beauty that is coming in. It is very human of you to be able to look at beauty outside of you and then to see ugliness within. But, indeed, that is why we have the Council of Joy, is it not? For it is joy that allows the human heart and the human existence to experience beauty on the inside as well. And I will tell you now, my dear and ancient friends, that this is the nature of self-love. The joy of inner beauty. No matter the stories that were given to you, no matter what was told about you, no matter what others might have made you into, the joy of inner beauty is a gift that can never be taken away, unless you give it away. But why would one do such a thing then? Why would one give the joy of inner beauty away when I have just told you that this is something inherent to all creatures? It is what makes creation into creation. It is what makes a creation into a creator. It is the activation of all of it. It is difficult for me at this moment to remain in this body. For these eyes of mine, these eyes of the channel, even though they see many things, even though they see the energy. It remains difficult in this experience you call life to see the total beauty when a brain like this one, like any other brain, has been so washed. Unfortunately, the brainwash didn't make it cleaner, make it more dirty. It did. Yes, Council of Joy, you should think that is funny. Then you should think everything is funny. That is your job. So, beauty and joy blending as one. Then there is love. I am not going to do the song again this time. There won't be any love boat, but there will be a wave of love. For love has also been reawakened, has it not? Oh, those who did the great honor towards all of man to sit within the council back then have no idea yet of the size, the grandeur of their being. You are indeed to be honored, all of you. And I can tell you this right now. A little piece of you exists within all men and women alike. And it does so still today. That is why so very often, my beloved council, you go quiet. That is why so very often you try to resist. For the state of love and the exchange that exists within all men and women alike has made you forget how much you truly are a part of each other. But a little piece of you exists within all of man and women on this planet Earth, and it will always be the case. I and all the others thank you also for reclaiming your position. It will radiate. And then one would think I would move on to the Council of Freedom, would I not? And oh, my keeper, Thea, sitting right there, would think it so magnificent of herself to sit in that council. It is indeed the Council of Freedom, but, lovely angel, you have forgotten one thing. You are within all of these councils. You are the intermediate, the go-between. Surprise. Of all the beings in this room, you are one of the three that would be called the most ancient. But you don't look a day over 20. That is. So, if you are going to connect yourself to anything, then connect yourself to the totality of creation. For that is, and will again be, and has always been, the task that you have chosen. And yet, in this life, you now choose to connect to this Council of Freedom. Interesting. It is from here on, however, that humanity shall find and reclaim all of the other things. That is why you, as a liaison, chose to sit over there, my dear. Because freedom is where it will all begin again. It was the last thing to be taken away from men and women alike. And it is the first thing to be fully returned to them. That is why you are there. So let us talk about this concept of freedom. Let us share. What exactly is freedom? What does it do? And how does it connect to those concepts that I have already spoken of in my message prior to this one? let us say this. It is a state in which one recognizes that one can never be chained to anything. Freedom can only exist when no connection, no conditional connection is made to all of the other concepts. Freedom is not truly a part of love, and yet love cannot exist without it. It is the connection that goes as follows. It is love towards freedom. It is beauty towards freedom. But it cannot be so that freedom connects itself to the concept of love and joy and beauty and anything else. Because if it did so, it would define itself. And that would be, again, the end of freedom. It is something that has happened on this planet Earth. One thinks, as one exists here in this realm, that freedom comes when one has found love, for instance, and joy and beauty. But is this truly correct? If you look at your entertainment, if you look at your media and your movies, romantic comedies, for instance, you see a subject chasing that which ever eludes it, love. Do you think that this is a free being? It is not. It is a being chained to a thing that it can only hope to attain when it can run faster than the thing it is chained to. And that is how freedom is looked upon on this planet Earth. And therefore, because of this simple thought, it can never be really attained. It is a problem indeed. However, let us change this. What if I told you that to look at the concept of freedom completely detached from all the other concepts, one in essence changes all the other concepts? That is the beauty and the reason why freedom had to exist within this council of Lemuria. It's very simple. If it should be not present, it would chain the other concepts to itself. Love would be chained to love. Joy would be chained to joy. Beauty would definitely be chained to beauty. That is why so many people on this planet seek beauty and then go down with it as the years slowly takes it away from them, or at least that is what one thinks. That is because beauty has become so very defined, and it is to be found in the world of modeling, in the world of entertainment, actor and actress, that once they have passed a certain age are not considered to be beauty anymore, not in the same way at least. There is a subcategory that may hope to attain some sort of continued existence, but it is never the same. So, beauty, love, joy, and freedom. Once freedom allows itself to detach from all the other things, then one allows itself to find all the other things again, and it gives the notion that these other things may be different in any given moment. That is the beauty of life, my dear friends. What a sad and silly and boring world it must be with the concept of joy. never changes, if it is always doomed to collapse in on itself, actually, that is the world that one lives in. Something is considered funny, something else is not considered funny. Bummer. True joy can only exist when there is an unconditional type of joy, which would mean that everything is funny. Always look on the bright side of life and death, remember? It was a python that said it. When freedom breaks the chains of all the other concepts within the council so that they don't attach to themselves, the concept of freedom becomes in itself a constant. And that is what freedom hopes to attain. Then, my loves, freedom turns into sovereignty. And that is actually the more close translation from the Lemurian word back then, sovereignty. But sovereignty entails freedom. And because it is a difficult word to use, I and the others, this time around, chose for the simple word. Because otherwise one would not always understand. Let us talk some more of this. Let us talk what happens when freedom defines itself in sacrifice towards others. There is a problem there. Freedom can never sacrifice itself. When it does, again, the concept collapses in on itself. So a free being will never commit any type of sacrifice, because all it does begins with itself. Always. The concept of sovereignty, however, comes in when the act of freeing begins with oneself, but oneself is also recognized as the other. That is when freedom turns to sovereignty. And then one becomes not independent, not dependent, but interdependent, which is a quite different concept in itself. Interdependency connects to interconnectiveness. Interdependency recognizes that consciousness may look at the world and at reality from different points of view, just like you are all sitting here right now. You are looking at one, and you are looking at the others, but the sovereign being would recognize one another in one another's eyes. Consciousness may have many points of view, but in itself, it remains the view. It is very funny to give these one-liners back to you, because it is you who wrote them in the first place. Let me tell you something else about freedom. Then I'm going to skip to other councils. The Council of Freedom was very much connected to that one elusive concept, the Council of Nonsense. Ah, the eyes open once more. The Council of Nonsense and the Council of Freedom only came together when those who were the most prevalent speakers to the Council, those who would be called the ambassadors of Lemuria, came. And those were the young ones. Those were the children. It is the Council of Nonsense that these young ones spoke to. It is the Council of Nonsense that basically created the concept that today is reintroduced as Ea Ichiba. It is a language for the young ones of Lemuria, who often came from other times and other places, sometimes the future, sometimes the past, not always other realities, that reincarnated there because their soul needed a type of rejuvenation or rest or healing. These young ones then often came to Lemuria. And once they had been reincarnated, they were reintroduced to the language of magnetics and geometry through Ea Ichiba. And this was the task of the Council of Nonsense, to give this gift to them. Then, once the communication with the young ones had been done, to turn everything that was said completely around and around and around and around until all mental meaning was lost. This was then offered as wisdom to the Council of Freedom, who found ways to distribute this towards the other councils. And then usually I was advised, I Lemuaya, on these changes. Because although you were, and still are, magnificent beings, you could not look towards the future of that which would be the completely solid world, the supreme overlay that you are now sitting in. And since to me all things are one and all moments are one, I could have that overview. I believe that it is new information for you that those who were in Lemuria, called the young ones, were not cosmic beings or angelic beings directly reincarnating into Lemuria or even incarnating into Lemuria, but those that came from a past or a future experience. That is what in Lemuria was called child. And it is those that chose to be born and to grow up there because they had already had the prior experience of that which you call life. Once these young ones decided to grow up, once these young ones decided to become fully immersed with their own energy and fully step into the society that was known as Lemuria, they spent sometimes decades with the Council of Innocence over there. That is what this council had as a main function, had as a main goal, to undo every memory that the soul ever took in to itself. You see, even though the brain is the only part of the physiology that creates memories, other body parts do it as well, but this is a different type of memory. The brain would never be able to cross the barrier between reality and the angelic realm, or the veil, as one says. But what is taken is often the core of every cell of the body, you see? And this does have a memory. Simple example. Let us say that one broke one's hand at a certain time in reality, then the result could be that this memory was taken back towards the soul, crossing the veil. Let us say that one had been hit many a time, then it would be possible for that part of the body to offer that memory back to the soul. And this is the information that made it so that souls chose to incarnate into Lemuria in its fluid state, of course. I'm not talking about a complete fixed state as you know it today. When that happened, call this a dimension unto itself. They first were briefed about the nature of reality and everything that happened to them. Then, again, they stepped into the Eya Ichiba. Their knowledge was brought on to the knowledge that was already present within the council of freedom. And then these young ones spent time with the council of innocence, so that these cellular energy memories might be deleted again, might be reset again. And for that, a huge heart is indeed needed. It is for this reason why you, beloved ones, often have so much difficulty seeing life here on earth. Because all that you would want to do is do what you then did, to reset everything, to give that love back to everything. If you want to have a name that often comes up in this channeled process all over the world, of one of the most famous bad guys, as one would call them in duality, then that name would be Hitler. One always says that this man carries no judgment in an angelic realm. And indeed, this is one of the young ones that I am speaking of, that did return to Lemuria in its fluid state, and that was undone of all of the experiences that had been built up over the years. You have given sovereignty and innocence again to so many that have stepped into this timeline, its past and its future, and even those that you see around you today. You often choose, dear Council of Innocence, that when you do incarnate, and for some of you this is not quite often, I must say, but when you do incarnate, you are so in love with those Lemurian young ones that you have helped, that you often choose to cross their path, once again, in this timeline that you call reality. And you often choose to place yourself in their path when their journey is going to be dark and when negative things are going to pour out of them, so that you can literally take the hit, so that you can literally be there when it happens, so that you can be the ones that basically forgive and return them to a state of innocence. In doing this, you are very strongly connected to the crazy guy on my back, the one who is called Kudumi. Because if there is any who knows this state of innocence, it be him. So then this little story also describes the concept of innocence very well. Innocence is something that you will not actually know here in this timeline, that you have experienced, because every action, every experience even takes away from the innocence that you actually came in with. You see? It isn't simply any type of negative experience that takes away from innocence. It could also very well be the simple act of experiencing anything. You understand? At least when the Council of Freedom is no longer active as one of the underlying principles of life. Now, before I go on, because I'm going to talk about all of you again, not done yet. Before I go on, I must explain to you a concept that is very important indeed. It has to do with time. It has to do with how you perceive time and what linear time truly is. It begins like this. When you look at the concept of linear time, your scientists today are trying to explain something which is called an alternate reality. They have it wrong. Why? I will tell you. Linear time, and this is going to be very interesting for you, but linear time is not so stretched out as you think. Linear time, my beloved, was created by this Lemurian Council, kept in the center of the council itself. Because if I'm going to try and explain how a council looked like, you might think there is a round table, coffee is served, tea maybe, for those who like it. But of course, we are not talking about a linear reality. We are not talking about a physical reality. If you want to see the council, once again, as it then was, then imagine a sphere. In the center of that sphere is infinity. Total and complete infinity. That we now call a black hole, in its center has a source of gravity. Gravity is that which creates linearity. Infinity is the exact opposite of gravity. Oh well, I am having fun now. I can almost talk about my tachyonic things. Infinity being the opposite of gravity means that to enter this realm that you call the cosmos, you step through infinity. That is why there is something that begins life, because it must be linear here, and if you step out of it again, you step out of infinity. You see? That is the difficulty of understanding this nature. This whole cosmos resides within that center of the sphere of what you call the Lemurian Council. The Lemurian Council that I am talking about will not be understood well by many, because when many speak of Lemuria, they speak, of course, of its fixed state. And Lemuria did indeed try to reinvent itself into a linear paradigm. So imagine that sphere. Imagine that center of the sphere, which would also be a globe, which contains the cosmos. Inside of it, however, infinity. Now, knowing this, then you know where those stepped into and out of this creation called reality. They could choose to return so that they could be healed in this concept of Lemuria, what to you would actually be described as heaven, simply put. Or they could choose to go further into the complete state of awareness. Now, I have always told you that there is a tachyonic photonic border at the edge of all things, and that behind that border lies God, infinite oneness. However, I have also told you that the border is made up of tachyonic photonic energy. That border, which basically is my being, has in its photonic center the concept that you know as the fluid Lemuria. Are you beginning to see what I'm trying to say? Okay, even if it is on the abstract level, that means that Lemuria, the fluid state, is a completely photonic concept. That is why there is the golden light that you would see, because that is the visualization of photonic energy. The reason why tachyon comes into play is because a sense of divinity is needed. And this is what makes the whole thing archaic. This is why the fluid Lemuria runs back and forth underneath you, through the timeline, being felt still on this earth today, in this timeline today, as the concepts of love and joy and freedom, basically. But of course, going much beyond that. If you don't understand this, no problem. I am leaving here very late tonight. I will show up in your dreams. I am bound for my outward journey with the first rays of the sun hit this portal. So don't stay up too late. We have a party to get to. Anyway, about linear time again. I have also told you that linear time is shorter than you think. I am going to tell you this. Linear time, considered to exist on a straight line, also exists in a loop. Only this time, the loop also resets itself. And that makes linearity different from circularity. I'm going to draw it for you. So I shall stand up. One has here the concept of circularity. Being the circle, hence circularity. One has here the concept of linearity. One thinks with a beginning and an end. What if I told you that the only difference between this and this is these 2 points? You know that. But what humanity has never figured out, if this is indeed the concept of linearity, what comes before this and what comes after this. I am telling you, the same field of experience. So, the difference between circularity and linearity is not so different. Look, this is the true sign of linearity. Looks a bit like a plum. That was Kutumi, I'm sorry. Anyway, when one travels the path of linearity, Big Bang, one in the end returns back, another Big Bang. The only thing that a Big Bang is, my beloved, is the reset of all of it. Linear time exists within a state of infinity, and why it appears linear is because it always resets itself. So your linear time is shorter than you think. In effect, it is not even 1,000,000 years. Not even. Science can say whatever it wants. Science can also wash its mouth with soap for all the lies it has already told. But I am telling you that this is the difference between circular existence and linear existence. Circular existence can go round and round and round without resetting itself, and the experience is had at the center of the circle. Linear existence goes round and then resets itself, and the experience is had on the pathway of the circle itself, resetting itself every time. So, why am I saying all of this? Very simple. Because that is your field of experience. And that is what you go into when you choose to experience what it is to be human, what it is to be finite. That is also what you go out of. And when the experience has become too painful or too hurtful, in a way, you return to the state of Lemuria. It is the only way to guarantee that a linear existence, hello again, that a linear existence is safe. You see. So never worry that anything might happen to you. Never worry when a loved one goes away. Never worry when things end for somebody around you. They are simply reintroduced to infinity, which is the natural state of things, based on photonic energy, tachyonic energy, which makes akeneic energy. Because akeneic energy is nothing else than photonic energy, which also exists here, by the way, undone of the illusion of linearity. And the illusion of linearity is taken away from photonic energy because of the tachyon. Because, I'm going to stand up again, I'm sorry, camera guy. I am his imaginary friend, by the way. Tachyonic energy. Look. Photonic energy exists right here on the linear line, as well as it would in Lemuria. Akeneic energy is, as I said, photonic energy undone of linearity. So why is tachyon so powerful a device then? Why am I so easygoing? Why don't I have any drama? Why don't I have any problem in my life? Because, in a way, I always exist here. Because of my tachyonic energy, my photonic energy stays archenaic, because I cannot enter on the path of linear time the way you can. When I come into a place like this, I simply go from here to the center to get a circular experience, so I can choose where I pop up. Now you understand the concept of channeling. Now you also understand why I am calling myself the metaphoric dragon, why others ride my back. Because they need me to make the journey from here to here when they come into this place, and then from here to any point on your linear existence. So, knowing all of this, over here again, knowing all of this, you understand why I have kept the Council of Awareness sitting right over there as the last one to talk about. Let us say that the Council of Awareness sitting right there, and this is not going to be an insult, is the least human of all of you here. Their natural state is to see all things all the time. When then they do indeed to incarnate as human, they will, in a way, have the most doubt. Because their natural state is to see all things. When they don't see all things, it is impossible for them to truly exist fully. That is why all the lives lived here in linearity by the Council of Awareness will always enter into a state of spirituality and attempt to wake up. Always. It is their natural drift. It is their natural desire to always attempt the waking up process. The reason why the Council of Awareness was spoken of last is also very simple. Much like the Council of Love, a piece of them also resides within all of humanity. It is the Council of Awareness that was brought in on the creation of linearity and the creation of the cosmos to ensure that a part of infinity and divinity would still remain. That within the human mind there would be a desire in the end to initiate the wake-up process. And this is why, my beloved, I am going to tell you this. There is no such thing as a ghost. Why would I say that? It has nothing to do with anything else, one might think. Oh yes, it does. There is no such thing as a demonic energy either, not truly. What if I told you that in the last split second of linear life, because of the creation that was placed into the whole of humanity by the Council of Awareness, everybody wakes up. Everybody. It is impossible not to. Everybody at the end gets that split second of insight, which is, if you look in their eyes when somebody passes over, you see it happen. You see it occur. You see them watching something. What they are truly watching is the self. They are seeing God. And the last realization that any human or animal or tree or anything has in linearity is, it was me. That's it. It was always me. It has always been me. Now others have told you this in other ways, but I wanted to tell you this again in this way because this is the veto almost that was taken by the Council of Awareness and that was installed into linearity and the creation of all things right at the very moment when all of this was created. Because if it hadn't, you would have indeed entered into an infinite loop of linearity, which would be your concept of hell. Right? That is what human sphere may lay after the supposed linear line. When it ends, that you get into a loop of suffering. No one cares about or fears the loop of eternal bliss, but the loop of suffering. Because of their creation, there can be no such thing as a living hell. It can happen on a mental energy. There might be humans on this earth who suffer all their lives, but they will never suffer afterwards. And that is what the Council of Awareness has created. And that is exactly why the keys are now being brought back together. Why I have said everything there was to say about all these councils, and why I explained about the arcaneic, photonic and tachyonic principles. Because a very interesting experiment is about to happen. You are making the music rather dramatic, Mr. Lovely. I feel like a Hollywood channel. A very interesting experiment is about to happen. The channel is telling me I always ruin these things. Building up a little bit of drama and then breaking it down again. Well, that's Imzaia for you. Anyway, I'm not going to say it a third time, but what is about to happen is this. The fluid state of Lemuria that you now know to be heaven, and the supreme overlay that began with the fixed state of Lemuria are going to come together. That is why you have gone through all of these things. That is why you have had a spiritual process. Awareness is awakening, and it begins within the human being. I have asked you at the end of my prior message to make a choice. Awareness is going to awaken nonetheless. But there are two ways in which this can happen. Either it is going to happen because this whole thing, this linear creation, is deleted. Or it is going to happen right here. I can only urge you to choose well. And it is not a choice that you can make right here. It is not a choice that you will speak about. But it is a choice that you will broadcast, if you will, to all of humanity. The creation of the inner portal that was done at the beginning of these days that you now spend together was so you would have a means for broadcasting these things on a arcaneic level. It means that you will not just broadcast it to those within your cell phone. It means you will broadcast it to all of man and women on this planet. Meaning, the first one that ever stepped into the linear process, and the last one that will ever do it before the whole thing resets itself again. This is the 12th cycle of linearity that you are in right now. The next one either ends the concept of linearity or makes it infinite. But it will not be the same experience. Not like the ones that you have had 11 times before this one. When awareness awakens within the linear cycle, you will notice that awareness will be there from the very beginning. You will not simply broadcast it either to those who you believe to exist in your reality or in your timeline. The reason why there seems to be so much linear time is because of all the sub-realities that have been created in the past. It will be broadcast to all. And the choice will be sent back to this council. Throughout time, throughout space, the choice will be made. But I can tell you this, it begins here. Look at yourselves as a sort of template of humanity. A template that has spread out throughout linearity, all of you together. That has copied itself, mutated into many different things. But the choice is going to be made here. Always know that you are not really here. This is just a projection of you. I am still talking to you from within the infinite space of the Lemurian Council. Broadcasting this now to all of your lives. Every moment that we have experienced here in this linear existence. It's everywhere. Most of your lives, for those who've had many, this will have come in the way of a dream, because you would have indeed thought yourselves rather ridiculous most of your lives if you saw yourself sit here right now. Most of your lives, you think this is rather stupid and silly. But this time, I am telling you right here. I have used many words, Council of Innocence. But feel now. Feel now for yourselves if these things are true or not. Feel, even though how strange they may seem and how little you may understand of them. Feel. Go into the nonsense and feel the reality of my words. I am at your service, and I will always be. I am sovereign, and I will always be. I am infinite, and I will always be. And I am that I am, that you are. Now, I invite you to, just for once, ride my energy. Ride it across all of the lifetimes that you have had. Ride it towards every human, all life, and spread the question. And then gather the answer. It is complete. Good news is, we are still here. Figured out what I mean by that one. So my beloved friends, I will never again call you old friend, because that has now been erased. As you know, we sit in interesting times, times of change. The arrival of a new type of awareness coming into this space. I ask you now to no longer be afraid. Stop the fear. Stop being the fearful being and become the one that you have always been from the very beginning. I am going to take my leave of you now. There is one who wishes to go home because his soap is going to be on very soon. Kutumi. But as I'm going to take my leave, I am going to ask all of you to be patient for a couple of minutes and to remain in silence. For there is one here that I have offered another ride for a very long time already. And it is a return to the central sun for what to you might appear a couple of minutes. I give this to her because she has always been so near and dear to me. So, as you take your time to come out of this process, give her the time to have this experience. I have always been one with you. I have always been connected to you. And I am grateful for this council who now remembers all of it. And so it be.
as humanity has now come to that point that the comfort zone has fallen away, even in Western cultures, even to those that appreciated the so-called nanny state, the so-called complete control of one's life, even those in the most civilized and docile, when I say that, I mean it in Western terms, not in universal terms, civilized and docile countries, such as here in the Netherlands or out there in Canada, for instance, you see a change of heart. And you see the governments and the authority figures in general responding to that. It is in that moment that consciousness expands. It is in that moment that humanity came to the decision, consciously or subconsciously, to reverse the process that had begun a long time ago, to reverse the splintering, to reverse its adherence to the authority of power. And when we speak of power, we speak of a very specific type. I brought it up earlier already. We are speaking of the concept of ma-non. Now, this is the idea that goes back to the invention of money and the invention of that sort of ownership, let's say. Because ma-non, in ancient cultures, was seen as a deity that often would express itself in negative ways, in ways that you would then consider demonic. And so a lot of the power structures in your world adhere to this principle. And the principle of ma-non, as you look it up or research it through your metaphysical knowledge that has been accumulated over the centuries, you will see that this involves the principle of stacking. Now think of this for a minute. Stacking. Look at the development of your cultures and your societies. Look at how, as humans, begin to gather and gather and gather and collect with more and more and more in the same space. Eventually, this concept of stacking even seems to take place in the physical world. You begin to build skyscrapers and those sorts of structures. Recently announced here in the Netherlands that in places such as The Hague, millions of new homes need to be built, and they're going to be built in the form of these massive skyscrapers. The principles of stacking. The United States and places like Canada and other places, think of more modern cities, more recent cities such as Dubai, for instance. All over the world you have this principle. Very much looks like a computer chip sometimes, where you also see the same principle in data processing. But you most especially see this principle of stacking when it comes to money, when it comes to finances. Now, there are many that have gone before you in this question of why this principle of stacking? Why this principle of ma-non? Why is this power structure so important to those that through service to self usually get caught up in this? And I can save you, if you will, a long journey on this one, because eventually, even though you will go through many an explanation for why this principle of power, of stacking, of ma-non is at play. It is very simple, just for the sake of it. For the sake of it itself. It is that simple. It is Just like you see in your own tiny obsessions with your notifications and those systems that keep pulling you back in. If you're not aware of it, it is that same principle. One thing literally led to another, led to another, led to another, led to another. And as the pile of whether it is money or power grows, the being that begins to hoard this, like if some of you may understand, is like Dagobert duck, the head duck of the ducklings in the Disney stories, like one of these rich uncles that literally swims in piles of gold in the cartoons. For this reason, these same entities get stuck in this power play. There is no other deeper philosophy here. This philosophy is now at the surface awareness of every human being on Earth. It took centuries to get there because obviously those cultures that previously had been colonized by the West, and in so many places where this colonization is still ongoing already, had centuries of awareness of this. But finally, this awareness has reached these shores of Western consciousness. And you have seen in these last several years, as the Me Too movements and all of these other things began, that hell has been raised and that political advantage, the Manon structure itself, has begun even politicizing and benefiting financially from these structures. So be it. That is, of course, the principle that is at play. Therefore, it will also, as this consciousness gets raised, do the same thing. As I said, there is no deeper thinking about this. It's just for the sake of it. But as this happened, you could argue that a great unbalance has been created in human consciousness and that people are now even more against one another, riled up against one another than ever before, perhaps. I would argue that this is not true. I would argue that this too is merely something coming to the surface that has been subconscious for very long. And so you see attacks between races, white people, black people, people of all sorts of cultures can't seem to find themselves, if you observe the nuisance, at least. Because if you do not watch the nuisance, if you merely look out there, if you merely connect from one person to another, you will see a very different story. But more on that later, more on that later. Through the lens, however, of the common cultural nuisance that you call media, it seems to be the story. And even worse, not only between the so-called individual races, like that's even a thing, but also within countries themselves and within cultures themselves. You have the big battle of vaccinations and that sort of story going on. And if it is not about that, then it is about other preferences. I have told you about this for years as well, that it is through the defining and the constant defining of preferences that eventually these goals are reached. Because let's face it, in order to continue to stack something that is already stacked, must you not divide it again? Exactly, just for the sake of it. It is a state where everything that has ever come before becomes possible. Humanity gets access to all waves of human consciousness, from the lowest ones to the highest ones. And as we would describe it, your reality perspective is now at a complete 144 frequencies accessible to you and completely based on what you are creating within yourself. And ultimately, the understanding of the inner being, the inner self, the creator of all that is around. Eventually, we come to the years 2019, 2020, 21, and 2022. In this moment in time, you are seeing a massive, some would call it a massive counterattack, a locking down of external reality. And many would describe this from a concept of villains and heroes and victims. But ultimately, that is not what it was about. The reason, ultimately, that these years in human history that you have experienced have happened is because, much like the bird that is getting ready to fly after months and months, in your case, lifetimes and lifetimes in a way, in the so-called nest, first in the egg, then in the nest, at some point gets pushed out of that nest and must fly. And as humanity came close to collectively doing so in those years, it retreated and created what it knew as the control system all over again in ways that many of you have never even considered possible in your lifetime. Maybe you heard of it in faraway lands, but never in your direct experience. So this is a type of collective fear that has played out. But now we have come to 2022 and beyond. And even though you see old systems shatter and at war with one another, duality literally battling itself out on the world stage once again, I am here to tell you today that it is up to you to take upon yourself the responsibility of a creator. And from within that responsibility to understand that your mind and the systems that are still running within that mind, and to some extent some more subconscious elements of the self, but let's not go into that today, is ultimately what is creating your reality second by second. And everything that you see outside of you collectively and individually as well. And you have now come to the point to be ready to leave this so-called vibrational nest. And this does not mean that you leave this universe or you leave this reality. Far from it. It means that you are ready to step into a much more truthful version of it. But in order to do so, and this is ultimately what this ascension study is about, it is time for you to, on a very practical level, learn to work with yourself, to truly get to a place of not understanding, but compassion and love for the self and for the other, and ultimately for the whole. And in the coming time, as we proceed with these classes, that is exactly what we are going to do. Because the only thing that is truly stopping you from taking any of these steps and changing literally the reality that is around you as a creator is your own mind that is in the way. I have explained to you how the years have prepared you, mostly from within, to step into this new version, this true version of yourself. A version that is literally based on love, on joy, on freedom, on truth, on life, on gratitude, on grace, and on well-being. And at that point even will manifest its own expressions of active reality creation.